Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. I just wanted to give you a recap of the fifth stop on the MLF Pro Circuit on the Potomac River. I believe I finished 85th, I think. Don't quote me on that right offhand, but I'm pretty sure it's 85th. Overall, it's kind of a challenging week for me. I love the Potomac River. This is actually the first time, and I think all the tournaments I fished up at the Potomac, I've not cashed a check up there. So I was pretty disappointed with my performance this week. We'll get into that a little bit here in a minute. But so I'll walk you through my practice. Typically on the Potomac, I like to fish up towards Washington, D.C. You just kind of get away from the bigger community holes by doing that. So that was pretty much my game plan for the first day of practice for sure. So anyways, I launched my boat up there, and like three of the places where I've done really well there in the past, it didn't have any grass this year up there. So I don't know why, or if it was just behind, or if some other factors caused that. So the first day of practice, I ran up there. I fished around a little bit, fished some hard cover and stuff like that. Thought, well, if there's no grass, then the fish should be on the hard cover. And I caught some fish, but nothing that I was excited about. So later on the first practice day, then I kind of ran back down to Mattawoman, the creek where we take off. I've always got a spot in there that I can usually kind of keep that in my back pocket. It's just a place I've been able to catch them over the years. It's just a milfoil area with a hard bottom, and I don't know if the bluegills kind of spawn in there or whatever, but there's some holes in the grass, and like I say, usually it's just kind of one of those places that if I need a fish, I can go there and catch one. So I kind of ran back there. There wasn't any milfoil back there. It was all hydrilla. So that was a disappointment. And I kind of ran around a few of the other community holes, Belmont Bay area, Occoquan. And like I say, I caught some fish in those places in practice, but I never really felt like I found a good group of them. It was just a bite here, a bite there, completely random. And plus the quality that I was catching there wasn't great. So the first practice day, I probably had 15 keepers. My best 5 would have went 11 to 12 pounds. And it wasn't anything great. I cranked some rock, caught some off docks, caught some I had some scattered grass that I'd found. Just nothing I felt real excited about. So day 2, I decided I was going to go south, and I ran down to Aquia Creek. It's a place I fished before. I really didn't want to have to go down to Aquia because, for me, the 2 or 3 times I've ever ran down to, south, it's always burned me for whatever reason. But I wanted to keep an open mind. So I ran down and fished an area where I've caught them in the past, and it was a place that I got multiple bites, and I thought it definitely had some potential. I didn't know how many fish were there, but that's kind of the way it is on the Potomac. You get some bites in practice, and then you come back in the tournament and you just kind of grind it out. And then so about mid-afternoon on the second practice day, I ran up into another place, a creek where I caught them. I think it's probably the very first time I was ever at the Potomac. Didn't know a whole lot about the Potomac at that point. I was back in this creek, and it was a hot, sunny day, no wind. Everything was just calm and still. And I must have been in there right at slack tide, because nothing was moving. So I was sitting there talking on the phone, and all of a sudden I noticed some grass started to lay over, and then I know some bait fish start flipping, and and then some bass started busting on them. So, it was a place that I caught them, a long time ago. So I run in there, and I get one bite on my chatterbait in there, but I'm pretty certain it was a catfish. The way they bite it, I mean, they just kind of knock slack in the line up there, and it's just a place that's got a ton of catfish in it. Can be a little disappointing at times when you hook into a big one, you think it's a bass, and it's a catfish. But anyway, I fished around in there, and actually I sat down and had lunch with a buddy of mine that was in the tournament as well. Pretty much right on my waypoints from a long time ago. Well, then come to find out that on my drive home, I had live on, and and I saw one guy that made the top 10 literally was fishing right there. And that's the problem with the Potomac is everything is so timing oriented. You can go through the best spot on the river, that week, and you may not get a bite. The thing is, you just really don't have the time, especially with 2 days of practice, to really spend, at least I don't feel, spend 2, 3, 4 hours, fishing one little stretch just to kind of wait for them to bite. You got to keep moving, hopping around, and trying to find something else. So after I saw that on live, I was a little disappointed in that as well, but it is what it is. So anyways, I pretty much decided, I was going to start south down in Aquia, and then I did have a spot where I caught a couple 3-pounders, a little bit north, not way far north, on some grass. But the only thing I didn't like about that is that, they're 25 miles apart. Historically, when I've done well at the Potomac, I find an area, and I sit down, and I turn the key on when I take off in the morning, and then I start it again when I head back to weigh-in. So I really milk an area for all it's worth, and and for me that is done. If you look at my track record on the Potomac, it's worked well for me. There's a lot of guys that'll run the tides, but I just have never really figured that out real well. Like I say, I just like to get into an area. You might have a little flurry first thing in the morning, or as soon as that tide starts, turning one way or the other. And then a lot of times, there may be other anglers in your area, but kind of you'll hit that lull spot, for a couple hours, and you may not get a bite. And a lot of times, those other anglers kind of move out of the area, and then you may go half an hour without another bite, and then you may catch 2 or 3. And then go for a little while and no bites, and then catch another 2 or 3. So for me, it's all about having confidence in the area that I was in, and I never really found that area this week, and I think it shows with my performance. So anyways, on day one, I run south to Aquia. I start in one area where I thought I had a big bite. No bites there. And then there's a boat kind of close to my second waypoint where I'd had a bite, which I thought was a decent one, but he was kind of close but not on it. So I just kind of ran around it to some of my other waypoints. And I catch like 2 or 3, a couple just keepers, and then maybe a 2-pounder or something like that. And then I thought, man, I ought to run back to the one waypoint. That boat had kind of worked its way away. So I get right to my waypoint. Actually, I didn't even get to my waypoint. I was about 30 yards short of it. And I throw my chatterbait out there. I catch a fish, put the poles down, and in a matter of 20 minutes, I catch 5. And they're all pretty decent ones. And I think I had 13 pounds. No great big ones, but just solid, good Potomac River bass. And then from there, and I had those by about noon the first day, and I was kind of middle of the flight, so I think I had a 4:15 check-in or whatever. So I told myself, well, I'm going to run north to my other place, because I caught a couple 3-pounders there. So I run up there, I mean, literally, I get right to my waypoint, throw out there, and I catch a 3-pounder. So that cold. But that fish I hooked in the tongue, and for those of you that have ever hooked a fish in the tongue, it's pretty much a done deal. That fish is going to die, and that's what happened. So that was about a pound cold for me, and then so I had almost 14 pounds on day one, but with the dead fish penalty, which is 4 ounces, I had 13 and change. You know, I caught a few other fish in that little area right there, and then I ran some other places where I had some bites up there in practice. But you know, there's a few spots that had some other anglers, and you know, a couple that I wasn't able to get on. But you know, that's the way it is on the Potomac. So day two, well, for those of you that don't know tidal fishing, the tide fluctuates by an hour each day. So you know, if low tide is at 8 a.m. today, it's going to be 9 a.m. tomorrow, and that fluctuates, you know, where you're at on the river. So, like from my farthest spot south to my farthest spot north is like an hour and 45 minutes from low tide at the south to low tide up north. So on day two, I thought, well, I'm going to run north first. Obviously, because I caught a 3-pounder there the first day, but I thought I'd get a little more of the outgoing tide there right before low tide. So I ran up there. I fished around for 20 or 30 minutes. Never had a bite, which is a little disappointing. So I end up running south, get to my waypoint, and I catch just like a keeper. You know, I fish right around there, fish some other waypoints. And I finally catch second keeper. And actually I worked out a little bit deeper, and I caught my third keeper. But overall, it was just tough. I wasn't getting near the bites that I got the first day down there. And I don't know why, if really there just wasn't a whole lot of fish in that area, or I caught most of them the first day. But here it is about noon on day two, and you know, there had been 5 to 7 boats fishing in this area that I was fishing. You know, and as I'm fishing along, you know, I look at my watch and it's noon, and I kind of look around, and literally there is not another boat. Everybody else had already left. So I thought, well, I'm going to run back north, you know, and fish my hole up there, and you know, hopefully I can catch a couple more. So anyways, I run back up there. I fish my spot up there, no bites. So at this point, you know, I've got a couple hours left, and I'm kind of getting in that critical, you know, what am I going to do? How am I going to catch 2 more fish to have a limit? And you know, I'm starting to spin out a little bit. I make a long run north up towards DC. There's some riprap up there that I got a couple bites on in practice, so I ran up there. Of course, no bites there. I hit 2 or 3 more spots, nothing. So I mean, literally at this point in my mind, I'm like, I'm going in with 3 fish, and I mean, it completely embarrassing almost, you know, to have that kind of day on the Potomac River. How good a fishery that is. And one of the guys that was fishing by me down in Aquia, I saw him, and because he had struggled that morning as well. So you know, as I was running by, I saw him, and I sat down and I asked him. I was like, you know, hey, you done any good? And he's like, literally, he's like, I just caught my 4th and 5th one. He's like, I've got to go back to weigh in about 10 minutes or so. He's like, if you want to fish here with me, you know, he's like, I'm okay with that. And I was like, well, you know, I've only got 3, so I'm definitely struggling. So very thankful to John on that for allowing me to fish there with him. You know, I caught my 4th one while he was right beside me, and then he had to go back to weigh in. And literally, as he's idling out, I throw my swim bait out there, and I hook up with one, and I mean, it feels big, and well, of course, it's a catfish. So that was a little bit frustrating. And then, so I figured I'd give myself about 12 minutes to get back in. I figured I might be pushing a little bit, because it was a little bumpy, but I thought I could get back in time. So, literally, I told my marshal, I was like, one more cast. I throw my Senko out there, and I'm just about ready to pull my trolling motor up, and my line goes tink, and set the hook, catch 3-pounder. So literally, I caught 5 fish on day 2, and that's it. I had like 2 13-inchers, and I still had like 11 something. And I missed a check by, I believe, 5 ounces, which was a little bitter, especially when I had a dead fish first day, which was 4 of those 5 ounces. But I don't know. It was different this week on the Potomac River. To me, this fish more like early May tournament on up there versus the middle of June. A couple mornings, we'd go out of the house, and I mean, it was cold. I'd have a jacket and my rain gear on because it was cold. Like I say, the grass was different. There's more hydrilla in places than not near as much milfoil. Lots of eelgrass that hadn't been there in recent years. But I think the biggest thing where I missed out was to me those fish were behind maybe a month, and a lot of those fish were still back in those bays, like Kauai Creek where I started. I fished out around the mouth, which is historically a good area. But there was, I think, 3 guys that made the top 10 back in Kauai. So that's and I've been back there before in previous trips to the Potomac, and I've always caught some fish back there, but I've never done real good back there. So I kind of wrote it off, and that's the bad thing about having a history on a body of water. Sometimes is you tend to write things off that could be good. How I caught my fish this week, pretty much 3 different baits that I used. First was the old tried and true trusty bladed jig. This has always treated me well in the Potomac. That's just what I like to throw, and essentially to see all the top guys catching them on that this week was a little frustrating, but that's always my go-to. Throwing on a Denali lithium frog rod, 16-pound Sunline, blues reel. The second bait that I was catching them on was just a swim bait with a belly hook. It's just something a little bit different than the bladed jig. Same thing on a Denali lithium frog rod, or actually I have this on the swim bait rod, 16-pound fluorocarbon, and the third Potomac staple, just a black and blue Senko 1/8 ounce sinker on a Denali N2 7-foot medium or 7-foot heavy, same 16-pound fluorocarbon. Those are pretty much my go-to on the Potomac. I've used those baits about every time I've been there. So if you fished the Potomac before, I'm sure you're well aware of all those. So anyways, it wasn't a horrible finish. I actually, I was 65th going into the tournament, the points, and I stayed 65th, and I actually gained a few points on the top 48. They take the top 48 to the championship. So I think I'm 23 points right now out of that 48 spot to make the championship. So I've got 1 tournament left on the St. Lawrence River towards the end of July. I've been up there a few times, but we're going out way, I guess, downriver, about 100 miles from Lake Ontario. Every time I fish there, we went out of Clayton, which is fairly close to Lake Ontario, and I've ran on Lake Ontario a number of times. Don't have a lot of experience in the river itself, which, you know, I guess could be a good thing. So we'll, I've got some ideas on, you know, some stuff that I like to do, and, you know, hopefully, you know, that'll work out. On a side note, my shirt, it's, if you haven't seen it, it's Vika. You can go to Vika.com. They've got a bunch of fishing shirts, fishing shorts. It's really cool stuff. It's got a little hoodie on it that I like to wear. I always wear a hood when I'm fishing. And they also have some great hunting gear. So be sure to check out Vika. It's VYCAH. And other than that, you know, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.